here is the project that we were working with here, the Crate and Barrel, the supplied zip file. We'll download that. Remember, it's that little button. There it goes. We'll open it up. Yep.
Do you need to download the whole file again with the new
No, I'm going to show you guys how to import the next one. Yep. So what I'm going to do, of course, make sure I have my folder that I want to work in. So for me, since my name is Josh and I have a drive here, that's where that goes. And in my texturing class, I'm just going to drag in UV exercise. I'll replace that so it's here again. And now that I drag this in here, it's extracted. I have the barrel texture, I have the checker, crate and barrel, crate texture, good. I'm going to download this alternative version of that barrel. So I hit download, it's right here, and there's that. And we also have our barrel alternative. So I'm just going to left click, drag that into here. So what Maya file do I open? I'm going to go to the crate and barrel. But before I do that, I'm going to go into Maya, and I know Scott has hammered this as well. Before we work, what do we need to do? Correct. Thank you. That was military. All right. So we got to go and set our project. So we'll go set project. Got to find it. Texture, double click, and then UV exercise, set it. Now we can go to file and open, and crate and barrel. Let's open it. All right, so I got the crate, I got the barrel. Hide that. Okay, there was the original barrel. There was some things I didn't like about this barrel, and I decided, you know what? Instead of you guys having to deal with this, we're going to just have a different one, make it easier for you. First thing that I didn't like, and you may see this over here, this is underneath my display, heads-up display, poly count. As a video game artist, this is your lifeblood. You need to have, not particles, you need to have this up when you're modeling low poly assets, as in assets for games, so you know that you're hitting those marks. You're not going beyond what that budget is supposed to be for. Right now, my budget right now for this, I don't have one, but I'm trying to make it easy for a UV unwrap, and so I shouldn't have this thing be like 5,000 triangles. That's just a lot. So this is actually 570. And that's helpful because I can actually find out how many polygons go around this ring by just selecting across here. I know that's 15 faces or 30 triangles, because faces are usually quads and triangles are the divide that by 2. So that's a lot. So what I'm going to do to prevent myself from having to work with this now, I'm going to go into File and then Import, and we'll get that alternative in here. Okay, let's compare and contrast those two. Right away, let's go to Shading, and then we'll do Wireframe on Shaded. Oh, there's some difference here. One of the major differences is I don't have a division in this middle section, and it's kind of almost half. So faces 190, faces 300, that's a lot less. Now, does it look worse? Yes. Obviously, it's got less res. But another nice thing about this is, if you go in closer to the rings of the barrel, they're no longer flat out across the top and bottom. So they're not a square. They're actually beveled out a little bit, so they're easier to grab when we UV unwrap. I'm trying to make this as easy as possible for a UV unwrap exercise for us. So same ideas, just less detail that we have to deal with, less polygons to make that happen. So how do I work with this one instead of that? I'm going to go into my barrel. I'll add this one. So now I have this one in my barrel. And this one, just send it away. Hit the delete button, and it's gone. Now, hide the barrel, open up crate. Let's open up our Hypershade. Coolest word ever in Maya, and yet it's just a texture tool. So what I'm going to do inside of here, I'm going to go to Create, Materials, and let's just use, this time I just use a Lambert. Now Lambert is basically a flat shader. It allows me to do some stuff, but not too many. It allows me to put in some color, transparency, and ambient, some incandescence. That's kind of really all it's good for adding common material properties. The blend as a material, you'll notice it has some shininess to it. That's really the thing that defines it, is that specular shading and bump mapping. So bump mapping is awesome. That's what gives us additional textures. So my Chewbacca mug has this look of hair. Gorgeous, gorgeous, flowing, furry hair all over that mug. If this was an actually in-game object, this hair wouldn't be sculpted in there with tons and tons of polygons. It'd actually be a texture that'd be mapped to the surface of this that would give the illusion of that little bit of beveling that's occurring on the surface of that hair on that mug. Available at Walmart for $8.99, just in case anyone's wondering. All right, I'm going to delete this blend because I'm going to work with Lambert. And here's another thing I want you to realize. Right now I got two Lamberts. I have the default Lambert, which is Lambert 1, and I have Lambert 2. Lambert 1 is your vanilla primary material. Anytime Maya makes an object. So if we're going to D&D this thing up and then put Platonic Solid in here, it's gray. If I'm going to make myself a cube, it's gray. And the reason why is this Lambert is gray. If I change that, you've changed your entire universe. Everything now, when you create stuff, is this puke pink. Now, why is that a big deal? It's not so much a big deal as it's annoying, especially if you are doing modeling. Modeling by default is done with usually a gray material because gray is just easy. It's not influencing the artist when you're working. This influences us, obviously. It's like a 1980s trip, right? It's this really weird color that is gonna make us think certain ways when we're working. Instead, making it boring and gray, we're able to see the object and we're not being influenced by the color. We're able to see the shading and the shadows from each of the polygons, and that's the more ideal way to work as a 3D artist. So, let's delete these out. Remember, leave Lambert alone. Let's take this one and name it something. I'm going to name this one Crate Material. So, Crate, M-A-T. All right. Now, underneath, I just realized I got to go over here so you can see it when I'm recording. Underneath the color for the material. So create materials, Lambert. I'm actually going to do one more time. This one, and we're going to call that barrel, M-A-T. So underneath the color node for these, we're going to load in our texture image. Right now, it's blank. Just press this little folder, and it's going to say image name for file attributes. Go to Crate. Open. Uh-oh. I loaded it in the wrong one. I put it in Lambert 1. So just make sure we have this selected right. So here's Crate. Open it. And man, is that exciting. Okay, there's one. Barrel material. We'll just do the same thing. We'll go to File, Open, and Barrel. Holy cow. All right, we're cooking. Now that we have our materials, we can start to work. The first thing I want you to realize, this guy, if we put the material on it, there's two different ways to do that. First way to add a material to an object. Middle mouse button, drag from the hypershade. So you're on your material, middle mouse button, drag it onto your object. I did it. I know I did. I'm not going crazy. Why isn't it showing up in my viewport, though?
You don't have hard textures on.
Yes. Hardware texturing is not on. So in your viewport, shading, hardware texturing, and bam. Now the material is actually showing up on, or the texture is showing up on our object. Now there's a problem with this. I know that the picture that I made, or at least the referenced image that I was using, looked more like a side of a crate and not like a brown chunk of chocolate. That's because our UVs don't exist yet, and they're all queuing off of one little spot. So they're not exactly working for us yet. How do we have this work? Well, we have to UV unwrap our object. So if I go to UVs, UV editor, I'm going to move that out of the way for now, and let's zoom out. So Alt right mouse button to zoom out in the UV editor. Alt and middle mouse button is to navigate left and right. And if you want to zoom in with your keyboard or your mouse scroll wheel, you can do that too. All right, where's my UVs? There's a little speck of dust over here. If I hold down the right mouse button anywhere here with the object selected, if I go to UVs, so right click UV, it's selected. Where are they? They're so tiny that we can't even work with them. So we have to do something about that. Easiest thing to do, let's go to UVs, automatic. Okay, so UV automatic allowed for me to project across 6 different viewports. So basically it's your top, bottom, left, right, front, and back. And it put the material in a better layout for ourselves on the object. So it actually laid out our UVs. The problem is that it laid them out so they're all individually laid out on one sheet. Helpful because we can see the texture, bad because the texture's not laid out the way we need it to. So there's ways that we can work with that. Okay. First thing that we should be aware of. My viewport for the controls here seem to have disappeared. If that ever happens, if Maya starts to give you problems, first thing to try is Maya Classic Reset Current Workspace. Now it might make a menu disappear on you, but what that's going to do is try and break anything weird that might be happening and bring it back. You'll notice that the difference was, if you replay the video that we're currently recording, so you can't do that right now, but you'll notice before, this UV toolkit was gone. So by resetting my workspace, it brought back the menu that I knew was supposed to be there. Now that I have that, let me just move this over a little bit so we can see it. I'm going to select this, and then now we can get to working. All right. I need to lay everything out in a nice way that actually makes sense. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go into my face mode. So I'm going to right click over a face, go to face mode, select, cross here, move this over. We'll move that up. And I'm actually going to marquee select by left click dragging and move this out of the way first. And now I'm going to bring this one over and this one over. This one, just dragging that by left click dragging over here. And now we need to align all these into the different corners to make this UV sheet seem like it's working. So to do that, if I were to go to my UVs now, so right click and drag to UV, I'm going to select all of these and I'm going to go into this little button down here, or this menu. This is Align and Snap. I'm going to use my Align tool to push these over to be right aligned. So I'm going to press that button. Okay. So it aligned all these into the right alignment, but it didn't align them to be all on top of each other yet. To do that, I have to go top alignment. So I'll do that again. Now they're all sitting the way they need to. I'm going to do that with all these. This time I'm going to do bottom and right. This one, left and bottom. And what would this one be? Top left, correct. Okay. Now that I have all this, I can move these to the corners that they're supposed to be in because they're all overlapped on top of each other. To do that, I'm going to hold down the X key, which when I do that, what's that turning on? Oh, snap. That's our grid snap. So if we hold down the X key and snap that over, what that's doing is snapping that into our 1-to-1 UV. So UVs go from 0, 0 to 1, 1. That's how the coordinates work in the UV space. And I'm not there yet. Right now, I thought I was, but I only had it selected with this arrow when I dragged it. And that'll snap it just on that horizontal axis. So to get both of them, hold down X, grab it by the middle, and left click drag it to a corner. Let's do that again. This one, X, snap it over here. This one, X, snap it down there. So now I have all of these laid out, and while I was doing that in the background in the viewport, if we close this now, there's the UVs that were supposed to show up. So now this is done. So that one's gone. Let's hide that, and let's bring out the barrel. Okay, so I did this time, instead of squeezing all those UVs down into this tiny little spot, I actually wanted to let you guys see what this looked like after I was done modeling this out, what the UVs produced. So if we go to the UV editor this time, oh, that's what it looks like. As a matter of fact, that's kind of weird because this looks like something else when you start to work. Oh, there's a commonality. So this was the default shape I worked with. This is the shape it became. Maya doesn't really care about the UVs when you're sculpting. It's not something it's paying attention to. There are algorithms that are studying how UVs are being laid out, and auto UV unwrapping is becoming a thing. It's not there yet. The robots haven't taken over, so we have to still be able to do this on our own. So to be able to do that, I have to figure out, yes, this was a cylinder, but I have to make this actually a cylinder that uses the texture appropriately. So I'm going to delete this model right here. And let's figure this out. Let's look at our poly count. I'm going to drag across just those. It's 20. So that's a 20-sided, no it isn't, it's 10. 10-sided, 10 faces all the way around this cylinder. 20 triangles. That's a lot easier to work with. It also, because it's 10, is an even number, meaning that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I can divide this in half if needed to make it repeat. And I'll show you what that means in a second here. So let's think about how we unwrap this. I'm going to take this. So I'm going to grab all of the wood that goes around. I know that this is metal and this is wood. So I'm going to select by holding the shift key and drag polygons. So I am in my face mode. Left click drag, hold down shift, left click drag, hold down shift, left click drag. And now I have all of these selected. They are not the way they need to look yet. So to do that and fix it, let's actually apply our texture so we can see it. So we're going to add our material, create material, or barrel material, right click, assign material. All right, now we have these. I'm going to go into UVs, and let's do a cylindrical. Cylindrical means it's going to unwrap it like a tube. So if I press that button, and I look at what this did, you can see how it's wrapping around in the appropriate direction, but the problem is that it's a little bit weird. We could fix that. One of the first things to realize, notice that there's this weird gizmo on here. There's these little red boxes and blue boxes. What that allows for me to do for a cylindrical unwrap is I could take this, left click and drag. And notice how that's squishing that all the way over. It's actually making that so that cylindrical unwrap is going all the way over from one side to the other. It is. All right, so now that I have that, I can drag this over to fit in the UV space, and I'll clean it up a little bit. I just want to take a step back at this and see, are those barrel, is that too much data or not enough data? Because right now, those chunks, those boards seem pretty big, in my opinion, for the barrel. So I need to reduce that. Easy way to do that. I'm going to, again, select those. Now, something to realize, how do I select these without selecting everything here? If I try to drag across this object and move it around, everything's coming with. That's kind of annoying. There's a tool in Maya that allows for us to be able to just grab these sheets, and that's going to be, if we grab just this one, I'm going to hold down shift, this one, and that one, not those top or bottom ones. But if we go to there and then go to UV shell, so right click and drag across that, Actually, I'm just going to left click on that. So UV shell, I have that mode selected. I'm going to go on this one and that one. Now I can move that out of the way, and I know they're all connected. So I'm actually going to bring this one up closer to that last one. So I have them all kind of compacted, because when I did that, you'll notice if I drag this over this middle section here, I have all this metal showing up on the texture now. So if I move that out of the way of the metal, now it's just displaying wood. But the problem is, again, it's displaying the wood across one board in a way that it just seems super, super stretched out. So we can fix that pretty quickly. I'm going to grab all these. I'm going to go to face mode. Let me move these out of the way. If I go to face mode, so right click face, drag across half of it. So I have half of this selected. So again, I was in UV shell. I had all these. I moved them so I could start to look at them a little bit better. And I'm going to go to face mode by right clicking over it and go to face. So now I can select individual faces. And I'm just going to left click drag across half. And I know it's half because it's 5 here and it's usually 10. If we go to cut and sew, split, we can split that and then move that over this other one. Now that we have both of them laying on top of each other, I can take this and scale it across the horizontal axis. And you'll notice right away, let me move these other pieces out of the way here. So this one and that one, let me move them. Whoop. Give me 1 second to clean up my shop here. Move these and these. You know, let me back up this train until there. Okay, let me move these out of the way so we don't have it on our UV sheet. We're just looking at it. All right, I have all these here. I'm in face mode. Drag it into the middle of our UV layout, and now I want to make sure that this goes from this edge to here and that edge to there. So I'm going to scale this up as much as I can. And then now, I don't want this to overlap too much, because if we look closely, we should be able to find where these overlap. So let me see where that is, right here. So if I were to take this, watch this seam right here. You should see, where else is that other seam? Right here. After a while, you'll start to see that seam become a little bit more prominent, and it's breaking the look of that. So to make sure that's not happening, I could just take this, scale this up as much as I can, and then go into UV mode. So right click and go to UVs, select across here, and then I'm going to hold down that X key to do a snap, and I'm in the move tool, and I'm just going to drag it to the corner. And then I'm going to go over here, do the same thing. So I switch to UVs, here, hold down X, snap. Now we're all the way up against that edge of the texture. That eliminates a lot of those seams from occurring when we're looking at it. And it looks like we have a lot more wood because of that. All right, we've got the wood. We don't have the top and bottom wood. Whoop. So what I'm going to do is just select from the top and then go down. And I'm going to go into UVs, automatic. And it laid that out for me. And it laid it out in one of the worst places possible. And for this one, on the top. And it's going into the metal. You can see that happening here. So what I'll do, right click, UV shell, select it, and drag it down. Does it matter that this face is overlapping any of my other work? No, it doesn't matter. It's just giving it that coat of paint. So you can have overlapping UVs for this type of example. Don't worry about that. So now I have a top, a bottom, and I got to get them rings. So I'm going to work with these rings individually. How am I going to do that? I'm going to go into my face mode. So right click, go to face. I'm going to drag across my model, and I'm going to deselect. So I got the control key, and I'm going to left click deselect across everything I know is not that ring. How else could we select that ring without selecting everything else?
Click one with the face where you can show.
If we were to click on one, so we have one face, hold down shift and then double click. So I have one polygon selected, hold down shift, double click. It went all the way around it. Now with this one, hold down shift, double click. Shift, double click. So now I have this selected. I can go into UVs, cylindrical map, and squish it down. Bring it over here, squish it over this way, and then down. And now I have this laid out a little bit better, but again, it's not 100% up against that edge. If I have it against the edge, it's going to repeat that, and I'm not going to see a seam. If I look for this, I can see a seam probably. It's right here. Okay. So not super noticeable. It's a crappy texture, but right here we can see sort of a distortion right on that. And that's because these two edges are not from here to there. When these two edges are right against themselves, when this texture repeats, it repeats from that other end. So anything that ends over here starts again over on that side. How do I fix that? I'm going to go to UVs, grab all those, not that other part, but I'm going to hold down X and snap it over. Over there, hold down X, snap it over. And now, not really a noticeable seam. And I have both the top and bottom parts of that. Alright, let's see what else is going on. Right here, we're going to do the same thing. So I'm just going to do that quickly by grabbing these. UVs, cylindrical, squish it down. Ooh. Push it up. And there we go. And again, I can just take the UVs of this part, snap it over. This one, snap it over. And that's looking pretty good. So that's how we can start to build these things out. Last but not least is this one, which I think is probably the most difficult part of this. So I'm going to go through and deselect everything else. Deselect everything else. I have this one, UVs, cylindrical. All right, what did this make for me? It made something that looks similar, but there's one thing that's happening here that's a little bit different. We have the bottom part. We have the top part. Or the middle part. Then all of a sudden, this part's right here, and then there's this inner part that goes underneath it again. How do we fix that? Well, that's actually an easy fix. If I select this and move this up, I can move that out of the way to see it. And now I should be able to find that middle one. Okay, when I select one polygon, I'm seeing a line in the middle. That's telling me that I have an issue with my UV still. So what I'm going to do is select those. So I went and selected one face, double click to have all those. And let's find out where that problem starts. So I have that one, and then that middle one. So let's go to UVs, go across here, and pull up. Did that fix it? Let's see. Here's this one. Where's the next one? Okay, it's right next to it. There's that one, and then there's the bottom one. So anytime you see, maybe you have something like this, where there is this outer white edge in the middle. That's telling you have an overlap, or something's folded on top of each other. You should see things with a white line all the way around the outside edges. This is a tell that there's overlapping UVs. So to fix that, I'm just going to drag this up. And now there's no more overlap. Now it looks like garbage because it unwrapped in a weird way. So we just kind of have to eyeball it. I'm going to move this down. I'm going to move this one down. And then down. And then down. That's more like how this should be looking. So now I can just grab this by the shell. So right click, go to shell, click on this, go down, scale it. move it over. I'm going to go into my UV mode, grab this one, hold down X, snap. That one, snap. Okay. Last but not least is that bottom one, which is the same thing as the other one that we just did. So this is how we would finish all these things up. The last thing I want from you, after you have all that done, is you'll save it. So File, Save Scene. Good idea to save it as your name, because that's what I'm looking for. So Crate and Barrel with your name. Save that. And then now that you've done all of that, go to File, Archive Scene. Press that button. It's going to spit out this little line on the bottom. It made a zip. So if I go to that, so I'm going to go into where that directory is saved. There it is. It made for me this Crate and Barrel _.mb zip. What the heck is inside of this, and why did you need to make a zip? Well, it's because, let's say that you'd be working at a studio, and someone is working on the texture, and someone's working on a model. If you give someone a Maya file and you don't give them the texture doesn't show up. So by giving a zip, you're giving everything that you were using in that scene. All the textures, the materials are all provided. Forgetting to do that can cause a lot of headaches. So make a zip for this. Okay.